I'd like to call the regular meeting for November 26, 2012 to order. Can I get roll call, please?
Yes. Mrs. Kraut? Here. Mr. Thied?
Present.
Mrs. Thunderbird?
Here.
Mrs. Buckley?
Here.
Mrs. Beard's present. Mr. McLaughlin?
Here.
Mr. Kudrick?
Present. Will everybody please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next item of business is the consent agenda. All matters listed under the consent agenda are considered to be routine in nature by the Board of Education and will be acted upon by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items. If any member of the board or any citizens request discussion of an item, that item will be removed from the consent agenda and will become the first item of business under the report of the superintendent's portion of the agenda. Item A, approval. To approve the minutes of the Board of Education of the regular meeting of October 22nd, 2012 and study session of November 12th, 2012. Item B, approval. To approve the personnel actions submitted by Rebecca Peck, Director of Human Resources, Employment, Bus Driver, Recall, 2 special education student aides, and a safety monitor, leave of absence, elementary teacher. C, approval. To approve the bills for payment as submitted by Sherry Papazoglu, Director of Business and Operation, in the amount of $4,359,436.80.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Support.
I got a motion by Ms. Buckley, supported by Mr. McLaughlin. Any questions? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. All right, motion passed, 7-0. Next item of business is report of superintendent. I'll turn it over to Mr. Weiss.
Thank you, Mr. President. First item, item A, approval of the superintendent search firm. At our last meeting, the board met with Representative Marie Miller from MASB and requested that we put this on the agenda for tonight. We'll need a motion to approve that.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I would ask that this item be deferred to the end of the meeting since we don't have a vacancy in the superintendent's office yet.
Okay, I got a motion on the floor to defer this. Do I got a second?
I'll support it.
Okay, I got a motion by Mr. McLaughlin, supported by Mr. Thied. Are there any questions? All right, hearing none.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Just to the end of the meeting.
Okay.
Because we haven't, as I put in an email out, we haven't had an official vacancy yet, and I'm a little nervous about committing to $7,000 expenditure when we don't have an official vacancy.
Okay.
That was my question.
Okay. All right, we need a vote for that. So, all in favor of moving approval of superintendent search firm to the last item, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Okay, we're going to move it to the end. 7-0. Okay.
Okay. Next item is approval of amended budget, and Sherry's prepared with a budget overview for you. And within that budget overview, Sherry's going to explain the difference between the budget that the board approved back in June, when we really didn't know how many students we were going to have, and the budget that we're asking you to approve tonight, which has the results from our official student count day.
So good evening, board members, community members, attendees at the board meeting. I apologize in advance for any sniffling, sneezing, coughing that I have during this presentation. I'm feeling a little under the weather. So we're here today to talk about what's happened since you approved the 12-13 budget. And I believe that date was June 26th, and we're now here at November 26th, several months later. And so there's several things that have happened between then, or between that time and today. One of those is that we have our results from our 11-12 audit. As you are aware, I think you approved accepted that audit several meetings ago. The other huge thing would be the student enrollment in terms of what the district had on count day. And so I'm going to talk about those. I'm also going to go through some of the assumptions that are being made that were not made back in June, not many. Most have to do with the sale of property. As you know, we've been discussing that in the last several meetings that we've had. So this budget here assumes that all 5 properties that are originally were anticipated to be sold are going to be sold. The first column shows what the approved budget was prior to the audit being conducted. So that is the budget that you approved on June 26th, I believe. June 26th, June 24th. The second column says revised budget post-audit takes into consideration how the actual financial statements ended, or what the result was, as of June 30th, 2012. The difference between the beginning fund balances is what was mentioned to you during the audit, that there was some deferred revenue that I expected to be recorded as revenue in 12-13, but we received it in time to record it in 11-12. So it's really just a timing issue. The bottom line to the financial statements and fund balance, there's no difference. It increased the fund balance at the end of 11-12, but decreased it for 12-13. I want to make sure you understand that. Okay. So moving forward, you can see the differences of revenue, 38 million to 35 million. Expenditures, 39 million, 39 and a half was what you approved in June. We're looking at that lowered a little bit to 38,310,000 or so. You can see the difference between the surplus and deficit for this particular year. You can see the result where it says ending fund balance. We offset whatever beginning balance we had at the beginning of the year, July 1st, 2012, with what's happened throughout the year and what we still anticipate to happen throughout this fiscal year that ends June 30th, 2013. And you can see the difference. We originally expected that would be about $44,000 to the good, a positive fund balance. And as of right now, we anticipate that we will have a negative fund balance of about $855,000. Remember, the 5 properties sold, it was in the budget that you approved in June, and this is what it would look like today. The real difference between these two scenarios, what you approved and what you're looking at now for this year, is the loss of 103.4 students that we did not anticipate when we built and assumed parameters for our budget in June. And you're all aware of that as well.
And we budgeted for a loss of how many?
200.
And our actual was?
303.4. There's a blended count that goes into that, but again, we're about 103 less students than what we anticipated. And just to give you, as you know, we use projections that are given to us by experts, we call them. We also look at the trend that district experiences, that we have been experiencing over the last couple of years. And 200 was really a really good average. I mean, it would be anywhere between 150 to 175. Unfortunately, this year, we lost more than what we expected. So the change in fund balance since you adopted the budget in June and now is almost $900,000. And again, if you take our foundation allowance times 100 and some students, it's right there, around $900,000. This gives you a projection on what if the district eliminated the sale of Burton and Mount Pleasant. So let me be clear. If we continue to leave those 2 properties off the market for sale, but still have the 3 properties included in the revenue, okay? What kind of difference that would make? You can see I'm going to go back and forth a little bit here. The only thing that changes, obviously, is the revenue. We're not changing any type of expenditures. It doesn't change any beginning fund balances. So it changes the revenue from $35,061,000 to about $33,745,000. Those properties equate to about $1.3 million. That's the only difference you're seeing between this previous slide and the one we're looking at now. What would that do? That would leave the district in a negative fund balance scenario of about $2.1 million. So as you can see, either way, whether we assume all 5 properties are sold or we assume that 3 properties are sold, we're still in a negative fund balance. Has the removal of the 2 properties changed the condition negatively? As you can see, yes. And again, the change in fund balance between what you approved in June till now is $2.2 million. So let's go through just briefly here what has changed. I mentioned to you The reduction in revenue, about $3.1 million, and this is assuming that all 5 properties are sold. So we had the deferred issue revenue case. I had to take off about $1.3 million, and then there was about $150,000 of hold harmless tax because remember, we lowered that to make sure we qualify for at risk. Originally, we didn't have that in our budget projection. You can see the loss of the 103.4 students, or FTEs, I should say. And we didn't get as much grant money or Medicaid money, but on the flip side, we don't spend that money as well. So those are always a wash. So you'll see that under the reduction in expenditures as well. On a positive note, we had some reduction in expenditures. One, again, was truly related to the fact that our revenue for grant sources and Medicaid went down in the amount of $662,000. But the other reduction in expenditures is related to retirement and insurance. Predominantly for retirement, we budgeted $2737 at the time that the board approved their budget in June. And with legislation and things that have happened in Lansing, that number is actually closer to about $2536. So we had some savings on that. At the time, we didn't know where the retirement rate was going to be, and as conservative as we typically are, we estimated that the higher rate. So that's good news. Doesn't solve our math problem. And I don't know what retirement rates are going to look like next year because it was reduced. So again, increase in fund balance from 11-12 audit was a little over $1 million. That's the difference between what we expected in our last budget revision for 11-12 to what actually the audit showed. So again, you're getting back to your $800,000 and $900,000 mark. Now we're going to flip to the next slide. This again shows with the removal of revenue, if we do not put Burton and Mt. Pleasant back on the market, again about $1.3 million. You can see it there, $1,315,000 for those 2 properties. Sorry. Again, the only difference is the sale of properties. We're talking a difference of $1.3 million. Some graphs, just to give you projection. We're at revenue. It looks like about 52% of our revenue comes from state sources, which directly is state aid and any categoricals that go along with it. And local revenue presents about 29%. That's all taxes, predominantly. There's a few little odds and end kind of grants that we get that are directly local. And federal represents about 11% of our revenue stream, and 8% is other. That 8% includes property sales. That is not considered local state revenue. It is considered other when it comes to the Michigan Accounting Manual. And again, that's including we sell, that every property is on the market and that we sell it. This shows what it would look like if we removed Burton and Mt. Pleasant from the revenue stream and just had the other 3 properties still up for sale. You can see how it changes the percentages. The 8% of other now becomes only 5%, and the others get larger. On the expenditure side, not much has changed really from June. You can see that salaries is approximately the same, and again, you have to think this is all relative to the total divided out by different sections, so salaries and benefits. So as one changes, the others do too. So if benefits goes down, something else is going to go up. But we're still in line. About 83% of our budget is spent on salaries and benefits. That's no surprise. I think that number is pretty consistent throughout the years. I know since I've been here. Another graph that shows what fund balance would be. Again, this slide represents what it would look like if the 5 properties are sold in this fiscal year. And you can see we're just about negative. I keep referring to a negative 900,000. On the graph, it looks more like $1 million, but it's just really the way the graph is displayed. And you can see what our fund balance has been since 2008, 2009. And I don't think that's a surprise to any of you as well. And again, another slide representing if we remove the sale of Burton and Mt. Pleasant from the revenue stream, we're looking at closer to over $2 million, $2.2 million of negative fund balance. So some things that I typically watch for between now and the end of the fiscal year in June are, are we in line with our substitute expenditures? Usually at this point, my budget's still conservative for that because I don't know how many maternities we're going to have. I don't know if somebody's going to go on a leave. There's just some things that are unanswered and unexpected that could affect these, so I leave them at the higher. And then as the year goes on, in June that I project what I really think that it's going to be. Is it 50% higher? No. We're probably talking a variance of 5 to 10%, maybe not even 10%. Salary adjustments goes in lines. As we have substitute expenditures, some of our salaries go down. If individuals do not have enough time to provide them sick leave, they would go unpaid. Some of those are represented if we have any retirements that we weren't expecting. We'll continue to monitor health care, deductibles, and claims. Right now, the health care trend in terms of the budget is pretty on spot. In the summer months, July through August, we typically experience higher claims, and that's because most of our staff are off in the summer, and they do most of their doctor visits and things of that nature for annuals during that time. So it looks like we're going to be on track for the rest of the year. Michigan Tax Tribunals, that's what MTT, just continue to monitor those. Those are, again, something you're used to me saying now. You all know what I'm talking about. Basically, tax tribunal cases that are settled, and we end up getting money back from the state if the tax entity does not, it's found that they do not owe their taxes, we get that back in state aid. The problem is we don't really know when we're going to get it. It's all a factor of when it gets reported to the state. And then some other things that could be better or worse than an expected year. Again, I typically use the conservative measure and budget a little bit higher for utilities, repairs and maintenance. As you know, we passed a sinking fund. And then delinquent tax collection. Sometimes those are better than expected as well. What to stay tuned for? Basically what's going on in Lansing. Most of you are well versed in that. Revised policies and economic updates. We will be looking at making a final budget revision no later than June 2013. And then the 2013-14 budget workshops will start in February, March of 2013 as of today. Questions?
I have a few.
Go ahead, Mr. Fee.
You said we lost about 300 this year. Do you know the numbers for last year, what we lost? Roughly?
I don't want to be quoted.
Right.
I want to say it was around 175.
Yeah, it was under 200.
Okay. It was close to about 175.
So we know we're losing kids.
Yes.
No matter what the situation is, we're losing kids. Do you know out of that number what we lost, whether elementary, junior high, or high school, where the numbers come, or is it spread evenly, do we know? Or is the majority of them coming out of the high school we're losing the kids, or junior high, or the elementary school programs?
This year it was elementary.
So we
That
lost
was the majority, and I can do a breakdown for you for the next meeting if you'd like. But that was kind of the surprise for us. We didn't expect to lose as many elementary students as we did.
And can we like demographically say it's from this area of which school?
It's spread very cleanly throughout. Hale Creek probably suffered the greatest loss percentage-wise this year.
Can I chime in?
Yeah, go ahead.
When you're doing that research, Rebecca, can you get us the complete mobility report that shows where the kids went and the ones that came?
I
know
can
there's
for
a
I can for
generalized and a
last year.
smart-
Yeah, we don't-
So that's like a little bit behind, and actually I have a pretty in-depth analysis year after year after year. Obviously, I won't have where our kids went this year until the
right.
end of the
Yeah,
year,
no,
but
no,
I would be happy to do
yeah,
that.
if you can have the most
Yeah.
available one that you
Absolutely.
have, that would be probably helpful.
I can show you a snapshot of where the majority of our students are going when they do leave.
Because that's something I would like, Mr. Chairman, to not only use in this function, but also I think that would be data that would be important to the early college committee.
Oh, absolutely.
Thank you.
Yes, go ahead, Daniel.
With those numbers too, our kindergarten classes, did we have the average enrollment, or was the enrollment down for our kindergarten? Because I know a lot of times they determine that count, those new kindergarten classes.
You know, when I do the report for you, I'll get that information for you the next time. And it'll show averages if this is a smaller incoming class,
Okay.
smaller than the one that exited, things like that.
Good. That's one of my questions.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, ma'am.
Sherry, so either way, properties on or off, we're gonna be in deficit, so we're gonna have to go back to the drawing board and see where to balance our budget.
Correct. That's an option. There basically are three options for you. One is to adopt a negative fund balance budget that is in violation of the Uniform Budgeting and Accounting Act. I actually talked to our auditor our principal, Mr. Fisher, that you've met here before, about what, is to be expected when we're going down this path, because fortunately we haven't had to do this. We're now in a situation where I'm not really sure, what can be done to balance the budget. So that's one option. You can do it. There are other school districts that have done it. There have been basically red audit flags all over the place in their audits. If, for us, if we did this, it would be in our 1213 audit. But it is a violation of the act from the state of Michigan.
But if we do that, then we also have to come up with a budget plan.
That is
to
correct.
come out
It
of
would be my
deficit,
responsibility
and then
to
we've got
immediate.
like 2 years to. Is that correct?
I'll be honest with you. I don't even know how long you have now. I know that I would have to notify them pretty much immediately to let them know we're going down this trail, and we would be required to submit a deficit reduction plan. I'm not sure what the time frame is that, so we'd be sitting and working through something like that to balance a budget in the future.
So
But yes,
Well,
it's
not
an
yet, but
obligation.
within 2 years, you got to be out of it, don't you?
it's more than 2 years.
I think they
usually,
give you,
but-
I want to say it's about 3, although I know others have
Usually,
gotten
yeah.
extensions.
90 days.
Well, we're
Planned,
not
yeah.
technically a deficit district as far as the state is concerned until after our audit
Right.
of
The
this
only,
year, so that would
that's
be
correct.
sometime
The
in fall.
obligation we have, though, is to notify them so
Right.
that they're aware. They may ask us to continually update them. That's a possibility. But until the actual audit numbers come out, it's technically not, we're not in
Official.
deficit
That
at
doesn't
that
prevent
point.
us from trying to fix it.
That's
before
correct.
And
the
you said
audit.
that would be, what was the deficit would have been, 2.1?
Mm-hmm. That's if, it's in between 900,000 and 2.2.
And if we go into a deficit budget, then next year, that's probably gonna double.
It's compounding.
Our kids, so
You're
how are you gonna get
accurate.
out of it in 2 or 3 years?
That's
Really.
compounding.
You're not gonna get out of it.
That's
right.
I
it's
mean,
okay.
I think really the only option is, I think you either pull them all off or you don't, or you leave them all on, because if you pull 2 off, we're gonna be back at this board table, the cat and mouse game's someone's gonna put a bid on another property, and we're gonna be back here in a month saying, well, let's pull this one off now, and we're gonna be back in playing these same games. So I think the decision is whether we pull them all off or we leave them on the market. That's the only choice. If we pull them all off, we know we're gonna be in a deficit, we're not gonna climb out of this hole. We put them on for a
You're right.
reason.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
I would also, thank you, I would also point out that there's a big difference between us going into deficit and us knowingly approving a deficit situation. That's 2 different things. That's apples to oranges. Granted, from the state's perspective, we don't go deficit until the audit shows that we're out of money. However, if we knowingly approve a deficit budget, we are in violation of the act.
I mean, really, we're in the business of educating children, and we need to figure out why our kids are leaving, for one. And if we have one elementary school, one middle school, one high school, 5 years down the road, we educate the kids that we have to the best of our ability. Simple. The kids that stay in Romulus, we take care of. Simple. Whether we have 1,000 kids, or 2,000 kids, or 3,000 kids, we take care of the kids that we have in Romulus. We can't worry about why the kids leave. We need to figure out how to keep the kids. If it's put more programs in our high school to keep a better curriculum, to keep kids wanting to be in high school, or change it somewhere around, that's the goal we have to figure out.
And you couldn't have said that at a better time, because in my mind I keep thinking about our redesign meetings that are coming up. Internally here we like to call them reinvention instead of redesign. Redesign kind of comes with a negative connotation. We want to reinvent and see what we can do to offer programs. Of course, not at a higher expense, because we know we can't afford that, but what can we do to keep the students and to attract students back, or
If you put
whatever the
some
case may
kids
be.
into it, we may attract those
Yep,
kids
that'll be
back.
that will be a
And-
board decision, but if we don't have the finances, it's really hard to
Attract them.
Yeah.
Well, we can't, we can't spend money we don't have right now. We're certainly not in a position to do that. But the last time around with redesign, 3 years ago, we focused on some value adds that we could, we found some ways to save some money, and rather than, because we had a surplus of fund equity in those days, we could use those. We added elementary foreign language, we added choir, we added a few other things that appeal to kids. And I think Sherry's right in the work that Mr. McLaughlin has been doing with the early college. Those are all important things to add value for our customers.
So I gave you option 1. Option 2 would be to basically for the board to sit down and talk about, our structural problem here in terms of our budget. We're not balanced, and discuss where to go from here. I think that there's probably a lot of discussion that we had. Again, we've had these discussions in the past. You know, that's obviously an option as well.
I hate to bring it up, but what about, some of the elementary classes were less than 20. What if we went with a, except for kindergarten, went with a like 25 to 27 class size? What if we asked unions and agreements to make concessions? I mean, until we know we have no other avenue, I guess I don't want to see a deficit budget. I want to find a way to do what we have to do to stay in the black.
And I believe those types of ideas or recommendations would be something that, again, we would discuss as a collective group in terms of figuring out where we go from here.
I would agree, Sandy, because, you know, Taylor just took a substantial hit in their deficit situation. And I think you're going to see many school districts follow the pattern of what has happened in Taylor. And I'm not saying that our employees don't give up a lot, because they do. And they do in most school districts. Taylor kind of went to the extreme. I'm sure you probably read the news articles. Taylor teachers are looking at a 6% pay cut.
This year and 4% next year.
Yeah, it's pretty substantial. And I think those are some of the scenarios we're going to have to look at. Because as Sherry just pointed out, we're looking at a structural situation that's been, to be blunt, we've been overspending a couple $1 million a year. And that cycle has to be broken. We have to use John's phrase, we have to service the kids we have. We have to make sure we have buildings to do that. And I don't know, I think some very painful decisions are going to have to be made from an organizational standpoint. We're going to have to shake up the entire apple cart. And it's whether we as a board can find common ground to do that.
Well, I think this is going to affect the unions too, so I think that they have an invested interest in it too. Do they want to keep the schools going like they're going? And so I think we need to give them an opportunity to either say, no, we don't care, or we do, and then we need to look at how we can, I mean, I hate to go back to split classes, but if that's what we have to do, or we have to bus some of the kids to the other schools to make the classes a size that we can afford, then that's what we have to do.
I agree. I know, you know, and I'll let the administration speak for themselves, but I know one of the reasons we have the low class sizes is so that we could qualify for more of the Title 31A money. But at what cost if we get that 31A money? Because, you know, we've sent a signal out that we can have 18 kids in a classroom. So now if we go to 25, we're going to have that many more people in an uproar that we've created huge class sizes again. You know, I don't know what the trade-off was. We never really did hear what the trade-off was, other than we got more money.
Well, don't forget too that the tax payers are paying less in terms of taxes due to that as well.
Right, and as far as the 31A money, the concept that that basically we're married to is that 31A money has to be used to reduce class size. So if we don't reduce class size, we don't qualify for that 31A. On paper, we qualify based on our foundation allowance, but if we can't spend it the way that it's designed to be spent, Dr. Daniels, correct me if I'm wrong, that's my understanding, that it has to, you know, a lot of work went into orchestrating those elementary class sizes so that we would qualify for 31A.
Yeah, that's one of the primary strategies that it supports.
How much money do we get out of that?
Out of 31A, about 1.4 million.
Sherry, since most of our unions and our staff and everything is pretty much on the 80-20 now, how much does that save the district in insurance costs, healthcare costs?
I would hate to quote you that right now, but I can get you that in the future.
You have a rough idea?
No, I wouldn't want to speak out of turn.
I just want to make sure too that
Yeah.
none of our unions are on the 80-20. None
Yeah.
of them
Not-
are under the
not-
cap. There's
not-
only
there's only a
one.
few.
No, there's no union that has met the cap language. All of those contracts were settled before the law became. So
Right.
when we come into negotiations and
A
for
lot of them are
2000
going to be hitting it.
three of them, teachers, RAZA, and paras are all coming up for negotiation, and they will meet the cap. I mean, they don't have a choice on that.
Right,
So
because
we'll definitely get you that information of what we're gonna see, but obviously some more conversation has to go on at this table with regard to additional concessions.
Well, and the concessions they took at the time relative to health insurance were very close to what the cap
They
was
were.
at that time.
Some of them,
Yeah.
some of them. Not all of our bargaining units
Right,
got
not
those.
everybody.
Now qualifying for that money of the 31A of keeping the class sizes, is that working inside the elementary school itself, or does that involve taking kids from other parts of the city to another
No.
elementary school?
Nope, that's all incorporated into each building.
Okay.
And then those buildings that, a particular building that may have a class, so one is possibly 17 students. The other one's going to have a little bit more, but there are support systems in place to attend to the children in that class that have a little bit higher class size. But no, each building, not only, some of them have more than one. I think one of them may even have 3 or 4.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It really depends on the structure of that building and how many grade levels they have and how they can configure the students.
So to give you
And I
a little
think those were
background,
the classes
4
that
years
were
ago
30.
when we worked really hard to eliminate the split classrooms, we fixed it by transferring kids to balance our loads, across schools. That was messy because sometimes you were splitting up families. We tried to avoid that, but it also involved transportation costs to get kids to the school that we needed in order to balance. 31A was a pretty elegant solution for us because it enabled us to keep, in I think just about every circumstance, kids got to stay in their home school. We didn't have to make those ugly phone calls, and I know we have some principals in the audience that could show you the scars from the fist coming out of the phone saying, "You want me to what?" Those are not fun phone calls to make, and so it's been a nice solution for us, and it really is a value add. It enables us to cluster small class sizes and really do some nice things for those groups.
Okay. Any other questions for Sherry?
So when do we do our homework on this?
Is that the board's pleasure? Because I believe on the agenda it says to approve the budget, so if we need to modify that or change
Well-
depending on your pleasure.
Well, it doesn't say which budget.
That's correct.
And so what we need
That's correct.
direction on is what you want to do with the property sales, really. That'll help us.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I move that we adopt the amended 2012-2013 general fund budget, assuming all 5 properties stay on the market.
I support.
Motion by Mr. McLaughlin, supported by Mr. Theed. Are there any other questions in reference to the motion?
Discussion.
Yes, go ahead. Mr. Kraut?
That's a decision I would not want to make until I try to see if the unions will help, to see if we can do class sizes, if there are other options that we can do without selling the property, that we can find the money for, to be able to balance the budget without it.
For me, I think we're
We
in
can
the hole
always put
either
it back.
way, whether it's the 899,000, 900,000, or the 2.1?
2.2.
2.2. We're in the hole, and I think that we need to work to figure out what we are going to do so that, one, we not making a hasty decision, because it's just too much to consider right now to try to, I just don't think that it would be a wise decision to do it. I think that we're rushing it. I think that we need to take our time, and that we need to make sure that we bring everybody to the table to have this discussion. That's pretty much my
Mr.
answer.
Chairman, may I?
Yes, go ahead.
I just want to remind you, this budget amendment isn't required by a certain date. I don't want, and I think you know that, and I'm not trying to procrastinate us getting the math problem correct, whichever way it leads us, what direction we lead or led, but it's not required. Our only obligation is to do an amended budget by June, and I'm not saying we're going to wait that long. I'm just saying we don't have a requirement to do this by the end of December or January.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, go ahead. Ms. Buckley was next.
Go ahead.
My dilemma is, we have a deficit it's a big difference between 800,000 and 1 point, I mean, you know, there's a big 2.2. There's a big difference, and we gotta figure out how we're gonna get there. And I guess we need to have some discussion on how we're gonna have to do it. I mean, it might come to where we're gonna have to put those properties on. We might have to sell properties, we might not have to. But we gotta figure out how to get in the hole, because we're gonna get deeper and deeper. It's just gonna get worse. So, and I guess my thing is, unless we do everything we can to show our employees that, you know, we're trying to make an effort to eliminate some of the deficit that we had, how can we ask them for concessions? I guess that's kind of my point.
And that's the
So
only
if
way
you're
you
not,
can get-
if you're not going to get all the revenue you can get in, I mean, how can
Exactly.
you ask them?
Okay.
Unless they're
Sure, I have
willing
a
to.
question.
Yep, I'm coming around the table.
2.2 million, that's a lot.
Okay.
It's a big difference between that,
Okay.
and the difference between the 8 and 2.2.
Mhm. And that'll work today if we were to sell everything or to sell even the properties that have buildings on them. But when you look forecasting down, what does it do to the revenue stream? I just don't want you to lose sight of
Right,
poten-
right, I understand, because what if we don't sell the other property, because then you won't have that either. So,
That's correct.
you know, you have one that's on the table we have offers for, but we don't have offers for the other one, so we don't know for sure if we're gonna get those monies either.
That's correct.
Well, and even
So-
if you do, it's one-time money. It bails you out one time only.
Okay.
But that was
That's
my
what I was
issue-
trying to say.
That was my issue earlier. If you pull two off and not the other ones,
Right.
what stops these two or other people who put in to put a bid on that property? We're gonna be back at this table. And my dilemma is, I thought basically this was to approve one of these options while we still talk about ways to shave the budget. According to the agenda, we have to approve one of these tonight, do we not?
Well, it's up for approval. You don't
It's
have
up
to.
for
We don't have to
Right.
legally
But
do
my
it.
dilemma is, we sat here for 4 months in April, May, June, and July, or June, before we approved this budget in June, and the employees took the cuts they could take at that time now. So opening back negotiations right now, how are you gonna do that until June? Some of them come to the table, and if they have to take cuts, they have to take cuts. But we already were at this table, that's why we put these 5 properties up for sale in June through this whole budget process. And this stuff was talked to us before about this, and we looked at ways to shave money, and it was, everybody was worried about transportation and athletics and the millage. If we get the millage or we don't get the millage, what are we gonna do? You know, and so that's my dilemma, to keep this on and talk about ways to shave the budget still, but.
Okay. Teresa, you had a
Yeah,
question?
where are we at on the redesign meetings?
Well, the
Because
first one is
in those
actually going to be
redesign
this.
meetings, we do look at building usage.
Yes.
Do we need to use the buildings
Yes.
that we have?
And that's a good
Correct.
point as well. Our first meeting is Wednesday, 4 o'clock.
And that's the first meeting.
That is the
Yes.
first meeting. As part of that meeting, we already have an agenda created. Rebecca created an agenda for that. And part of the discussion that night will be really just introductions, ideas, and then we'll come together not too much longer after. December 13th will be the first really get together. Let's talk about what kind of ideas and get in small groups. But one of them is to share information on our facilities. And we have maps, and we have what kind of space are available in each of our buildings. So yes, that's all going to be available this coming Wednesday at 4 o'clock at our redesign meeting.
And that's open to
That is,
everyone.
well, what we've asked is our administrators to invite a parent or two
Right.
from their building.
Right.
And we have some community members that are also going to be there. Some individuals from City Hall, I believe.
We've invited members of City Hall, city government to come and participate with this, provide some information. Of course, all board members are more than
Correct.
welcome.
Right.
Mr. McLaughlin, you had a question?
Thank you. Yeah, I was just, John restated the issue. It was discussed that, we should go and see if the employees had given us everything they could. I'm kind of paraphrasing, but supposedly that happened last year and the year before, because this is the second year we've balanced the budget by saying we're going to sell properties. And we did discuss at length about the implications of selling properties. Do we sell them? Don't we sell them? What happens if we don't? And so I think we need to approve some type of an amended budget just so that we can give the administration direction on where we go next. this redesign, reinvention, reimagining, whatever we want to call the buzzword of the week for the fiscal problem that we're in. I like Mr. Theed. He basically touched on one elementary, one junior high, and the high school. There is a full campus model out there that we could conceivably adopt that would do just that and take us from 6 school buildings to 3. And I think it's something that reality is going to have to address. We cannot afford to operate and maintain 6 buildings anymore. If the community is not, for whatever reason, going to send this community's own children to our schools, instead of us sitting and wondering and scratching, gee, what can we do about it? We have to plan for the children we do have and make sure we're here tomorrow for them. And, I spoke reservations, I'm loath to do the whole finger pointing thing, but I spoke reservations about using this accounting move to show the budget balanced by putting properties on the market in the first place. And, now it's come to roost.
Sherry, you mentioned, and I think a lot of the board members all agree that we all got to roll up our sleeves and start checking every little line there is of where we can possibly save anything. If we put the properties on the market, we can save a lot of money. If we take the properties off the market, it's going to cost us a lot of money. We put them on, somebody buys them that we don't want, it's going to cost us money in the long run. Put them on the market and somebody buys them, somebody else is going to get mad. So it's darned if you do and darned if you don't. I'll just keep it that way. It's no matter which way we go, it's not a right way. You're talking about going through the budget more and trying to figure out, Sandy brought up points, bringing the unions in to see if they would be willing to take some more concessions to try to possibly refrain from using these properties that we wouldn't have to sell if they would. The economy's tough for everybody. Anybody in this community knows that. There's a lot of things that we need to find out how to get our students back in our building. You mentioned that we're 100 students more than what you projected. Why? And that's a question I've asked for several years, and nobody can really give why. They just give us numbers, and we need to know why. Is it because the families, their parents have been relocated, and now they've had to move out? Well, then naturally we can't hold that over anybody's head. Is it because they didn't want to go to Building A and they want to go to this district because they offer something? Why can't we offer it? I think the board itself, and I think we need to sit down, whether it's before or after the redesign, the board needs to sit down, they need to roll up their sleeves, whether it takes several nights in a row, and come up with some kind of ideas to fix this problem now. We can't be waiting until June to come up with an idea. This community deserves more than that. They need to have confidence in us. We've gained confidence in the community over the past. We've got community support when we asked for the millage. They all came out. A lot of people voted. It was 2-to-1 marching. It was great. I thought it was a great display of teamwork. We don't need to lose that trust that we have in the community. And right now, I think the board is teetering on that. And we need to decide what we're going to do, folks. I mean, there's 7 of us up here. We all got 7 different opinions. But I think we all can agree that no matter what we do, half the community is not going to like it, and the other half is going to like it. So the question is you got to figure out what you can do that you think is right, and when you put your head on your pillow at night thinking, yeah, I did what I thought was right, and stand behind it.
Okay, so what's our next step? Okay, we approve it, say we take them off.
Mhm.
Okay, so what's our next step? Because when we went before, we went to the employees,
Mhm.
and they gave us what we asked for to try to balance the budget to get
Right.
out the hole. So now we gotta go back. And do we have that much time to be able to go back? Because you almost you gotta renegotiate.
Yeah, you're pretty much half a year right now, and to get letters of understanding.
Pretty much, right?
Well, as Rebecca said, 3 units expire at the end of
Right.
this year.
Right. So when we go into, we don't have to, and I don't think what we're suggesting here is that we open up everybody's contract tomorrow and next Monday take concessions. What I think we're talking about is putting a deficit elimination plan in place and including our collective bargaining as part of that for 13-14. That we can do.
I
mean,
would agree.
we have 3 big contracts
The
opening.
discussion is how big is that deficit
Well-
anticipated, whether we go
Right.
with the 900 figure or the 2.2 million.
I think the biggest thing is if the board decides they want, if the majority of the board decides they want to do with employee concessions, what are they? And then I think that's where Rebecca and Sherry are going to have to sit down and figure out what the dollar amount is going to come up to. If we said it's going to be X or Y we want, what does X equal and what does Y equal? You know, the community, I mean, our employees, they've always stepped up to the plate. You know, some of them have stepped up a little closer than others, but I think every unit and every employee has given back over the past few years. Some take a little longer than others, but everybody has given back. But we've got to tighten our belts even tighter. I mean, we thought the way the economy was going, things were going to start changing, but 100 more students, we need to find out why. You know, I'm only here till the end of December, but I'll tell you what, if the board wanted, I'd sit there and make the phone calls on 300 some students to try to find out why they left. I'd do it. I don't have no problem. And then I'd report back to the board and let them know why they left. This is what I found out. But and I won't even charge you for it. So, but I mean, you know, I live in a community, and when you have bad schools, the schools are suffering, my property value suffers. So whether or not you have schools and students in the building or not, we're all going to pay. I mean, that's part of life. There's a couple things we get to do in this world: pay taxes and die. So we're going to be paying taxes for a long time. So we gotta. I mean, yeah, I hate the idea of having to pay more myself, but if it keeps my property value up and it educates a student, it gets a good degree and a good job, and they can pay a lot of taxes, hopefully I can retire.
Mr. Chair, I think, if I may,
Yes.
going forward, we're gonna have to do that anyway. Go to employees, because we're just, I say, our hole is just getting deeper, so it just depends on how much we're gonna have to ask them for. And so
I
we
think
do our
what,
best to try to get the revenue that we can, or, you know, you just keep going to the employees and try to get them to make concessions.
I'm inclined to agree with you that, you know, we're gonna have to do both. We're gonna have to show, again, I can't speak for our bargaining units, but to me, logic tells me that if we show we've done everything we can to extract as much local revenue as we can without taking from them, they'll be much more amenable at the table. But if they think we're, as an employer, holding out, why would they come hat in hand and say, here, take from me?
exactly.
You know, that's just not how, you know, and unfortunately, that means liquidation. It does. You know, we don't like to compare schools to business because our children are not products, but there are some business aspects we have to follow.
Well,
That or we raise
We-
lunch to $10 a person for, just kidding.
well, I mean,
Yeah. That yummy
I really
macaroni
think,
cardboard.
for our union aspects, and we tried this last time, and it just really wasn't communicated in the best means, but I think a letter from the board needs to go out to all the unions and have the membership hear from the board and asking them to be here so they can hear the language from the board and not a negotiation thing, nothing like that, just to hear what we need, and then turn it over to the administration, let them negotiate, but that way all the unions hear the same thing and everybody's gassed the same thing, if that's what they want to do. But, you know, Mr. McLaughlin said, you know, our students aren't products. Yes, they are, really. I mean, they come to us as a kindergarten with very little knowledge, and we try to educate them as best we can to send them out into the world to hopefully be successful. And we only have them for a short period of time, and we got to educate them the best we can, because if our students aren't getting the jobs, the next city students are. And we need to keep our kids working so our kids can be productive. It's a tough decision, unfortunately. You know, this is probably one of the hardest jobs on the Board of Education, is when we start dealing with money and start affecting people's lives.
Can you vote on the motion on the floor?
Okay, we've got a motion on the floor for the amended budget.
Repeat the motion.
Yeah, the motion was that the board adopt the amended 12-13 general fund budget, assuming all 5 properties remain on the market. And that
All
was
right.
supported by Mr.
Right. Okay, let's do roll call.
Mrs. Kraut,
No.
Mr. Theed,
Yes.
Mrs. Funderburg,
No.
Mrs. Buckley,
Yes.
Mrs. Beards, yes. Mr. McLaughlin,
Yes.
Mr. Kudrick,
Yes?
5-2.
Okay, well, we have the direction, and, you know, one of the things that was beneficial to the district last time was when the board gave us clear direction, our employees did come through for us. And we'll do our best, we'll roll up our sleeves and do what we can now with this. So, that brings me to item C, which I think will be a short story. We wanted an option, and what I'm hearing now is that option 2, authorizing the administration to pursue sale of Burton Center to interested parties, would be the direction that the board has chosen. Would that be a
Mr. Chairman,
safe assumption?
Yes, sir.
I would move the Board of Education authorize the administration to pursue the sale of Burton Center to interested parties as outlined in option 2 and reflected by the vote in the budget.
Wait a minute here. Are you reading a different one than I am?
No.
No, option 2, that's the next page.
Yeah. It's gotta go one more page.
Okay. Sorry about that.
I just added as reflected in the vote on the budget.
Okay. Okay, I got a motion by Mr. McLaughlin for option 2. Can I get a second? Okay, Mr. Theed supported it. In discussion?
Yeah, I mean, basically, that's to pursue the sale of Burton Center and all 5 properties still to take bids to whenever we want to take bids
Correct.
on just all the properties.
Yeah, it's just specifically what the reason the motion is there is because only those 2 were taken off the market.
That's correct.
So we can still entertain bids from other people, but bids in.
With interested parties.
Right.
Any other questions? Okay, let me get roll call on this one, please.
Mrs. Kraut,
No.
Mr. Theed,
Yes.
Mrs. Funderburg, Mrs. Buckley, Mrs. Beard, yes. Mr. McLaughlin,
Yes.
Mr. Kudrick,
Yes?
6-1.
Thank you. We now have the direction we need to move forward. Item D, we've been discussing with the board the option about refunding our debt levy, and at this point, the projection, and this may change a little bit, but at this point, the projected savings, and that savings, I wish it were for this year, but it's for the life of the bonds, which the last bond gets paid in 2029. The projection is for about $1.9 million in
Yes.
total savings, and that's beyond what we're already saving from the last refinance. So there isn't a lot of good news tonight, but that is good news, and we're asking for the board to move forward on that.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
I move the Board of Education adopt the Director of Business and Operations recommendation to adopt the resolution authorizing issuance and delegating the sale of Romulus Community Schools 2013 refunding bonds from 2003 as outlined.
Support,
Is that Teresa?
yes.
Okay, I got a motion by Mr. McLaughlin, supported by Ms. Beer. Just to let everyone know, I don't know if anybody mentioned this, but the rationale is the present value savings estimated as $1,917,129 for the debt service fund. Okay, this will actually lower the future loans, so just to,
It has the potential to lower future school bond loan funds that
Right.
the district is participating in now to meet those bond obligations, and potentially shorten the length of time the district has to pay the bonds, which means shorten the time that the taxpayers have to pay a 7 mil debt levy.
it helps everybody in the long run. Any questions? Okay, can we get a vote, please? All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion passed 7-0.
All right, brings me to item E, items of interest from the superintendent. Board members, you have in your packet weekly updates from Hale Creek, Barth, November newsletter from WIC, and Community High, and also information on the Romulus High School Student of the Month. You have from the middle school, a week in the life of SIG letter, which is an update from some of the activities in the middle school. You also have the latest and greatest version of the Wingspan from the high school. And that brings us to communications and expressions from the public. Mr. President, back to you.
Okay, I apologize for this one here because he wanted to speak on item C, the Burton Center, but Tim Stopeker? What's that? Tim Stoker. Okay, come on up, sir. Sorry about that, messing up your name. Apologize not catching you there with item C. I think we got a couple other ones coming over here.
Should be a
There's a microphone right there. I think the switch is at the top.
Right at the bottom. See it by the keyboard? Yep.
The power button, the top.
Members of the board, my name is there we go. There, I think it's on now. Members of the board, my name is Timothy Stoker. I'm here on behalf of School Properties, which had submitted a cash offer to the school district for the property known as the Burton School. The offer was a standard contingent offer that we had submitted. Subsequent to submitting that offer, we also submitted an addendum to the offer, extending the offer an additional 30 days beyond the 2-week time period that was initially submitted. Subsequent to submitting that offer, we also were under the impression, or were advised upon information and belief, that a land contract offer had also been submitted to the school district as well, and that there were perceived financial benefits to the school district by acquiring or selling the property on land contract. So accordingly, we submitted a letter through the brokers on Friday saying that we would be willing to also participate in a land contract sale at an increased interest rate over that and above which was offered by the potential land contract purchaser, as well as flexibility on the terms. Though listening to what was said tonight, if there is a need for cash tonight, this year, in this fiscal year, a land contract offer which defers payment over the time of the land contract, even if discounted and sold, would not realize the dollars allocated to the budget from the sale of the Burton property at a full price offer in one fell swoop. So there might be a payment stream at an interest rate over time, but even on a discounted value, unless the price was X dollars, the school district would not realize in this fiscal year the dollars it needs, or it perceives that it needs to meet its budget issues for this year. Yes.
Was that what you were referring to when you mentioned perceived financial advantage?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. So, and we've not seen the terms of that offer, so again, it's upon information and belief that we understand there was an offer submitted on that basis. We had looked at what the school district had first passed with its budget amendment back in May and June of this year, when it said, let's put the properties on the table for sale. That was part of that budget amendment or budget approval process that occurred in June of this year, and that the anticipation would be is that the district would realize the cash within the budget year and then not be deferred. With that said, we're prepared to proceed on either basis, though we see, from our perspective, though limited, an advantage to a cash offer. And for us to be able to proceed with that, we have not had an opportunity yet to inspect the property or building, which is a normal process with the potential acquisition of land. And that's even built for in the purchase agreement itself. We don't need to see that before the offer is accepted, but that would be part of the due diligence that's there, and certainly the normal title requirements that would be part of a normal purchase agreement. So with the motion that was made tonight to instruct the administration to offer, continue, or to relist or offer these properties for sale, we'd have the following questions. What would be the process to be able to do that? Is it the same process? Do we go through the existing broker arrangement, our broker to your broker? Would be the first question that we'd state. Second, we would also affirm, maybe not so much a question, that we are prepared to continue with a full price offer for the property as was submitted originally to the board, and we again reaffirm that. Again, the issue of aspect or the issue of inspection potential of the property, timelines that would be utilized for submission of offers. Is there a due date by when everybody must submit? Is the school district thinking about an auction? What would be the process so we would understand that? And then if we are to get an opportunity to go through the property and then continue the submission of offers, to whom do we do that to? Do we do it through the same brokers? Are you going to use the same broker that currently listed the property for sale? And we need to also, the question is, does the end use then influence the decision process? We've made it clear as to what our end use would be, and from the very beginning, we've not wanted to conceal that to the district, that the potential use of the property would be for a school. So those are the basic questions that we have. We'd like to proceed in the most expeditious manner as possible with the offer that we have in, knowing that's extended through at least, I think, through the end of the year, really, through the end of the current calendar year. And would be willing to work with you in however we can do that. So it's the process, the timing, and how you want us to proceed. And we'd answer any questions that you might have. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I have questions, but I'll ask them during my 3 minutes.
Okay, the next person I have up here is Mr. Miller.
I don't think I'll need the microphone.
But you still got to come up to the
Do I
front,
gotta
sir.
come up in front?
You sure
People
do.
at home got to hear you, Jen.
Should I use the microphone?
Please, sir.
Just for the record, okay. Thank you, good evening.
Is it on? I think they
You
put
might
it
turn it
on.
on.
Okay, up we go.
There we go.
There we go. You probably wish I hadn't done this now. I want to thank you for the opportunity to talk to you about this. There are two responsibilities that the school board has, in my opinion. The first responsibility is to educate our children at the best level that we possibly can. The second obligation to the school board is a fiduciary responsibility to the citizens who pay the taxes. I believe by the actions that was done tonight shows that you have a desire to do your fiduciary responsibilities. As Mr. Kudrick says, 50% of the time or less they like what you say, and 50% of the time they don't like what you say. And I'm totally aware of that. By selling the properties, if you desire to do a debt elimination plan, the municipalities do what's called a 5-year debt elimination plan. The city of Romulus has one in place right now. Now, by selling the properties, it would allow you that if you established a 5-year debt elimination plan, it would allow you to reduce that plan in such a method that when you got to the end of the 5 years, you certainly would be able to meet your responsibility. I don't know what the ramifications are in regards to not having the ability to meet a 5-year debt elimination plan. I haven't found that out yet. There probably are some fines, but by selling these properties gives you a heads up and moves you forward right away with the ability to obtain a certain amount of money to put it towards the debt elimination plan, which I understand you haven't done yet, but you will if we continue on a negative fund balance. And then by selling those will allow you to move forward to fulfill the obligation of the 5-year, if that's what you get, debt elimination plan. I want to thank you for what you did tonight. I think it was the right thing. Appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. Go ahead, ma'am. Come on.
Yes, my name is Elsie Fraser Trevetti. I don't think I need a mic.
But you got to use it anyways.
It goes through the system.
Okay.
You got to come on this side of the table so they can pick you up on the camera, please. You look fine for 21 years old. You look fine for 21.
We won't to that. Yes, my name is Elsie Frazier Trevetti. Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I represent God City of Refuge, the church that is interested in the
I
property.
think she's got it on.
We did do a walkthrough. We are still interested, and we said we would purchase it as is. And we did have a few phone calls from, I don't know if it's from this gentleman or whomever, wanting to buy our part of our property that is adjacent to the school. We have approximately 38 acres there, and we want to use it for church purposes, not another school. And we've been interested. I've been having a contact with Sherry here since, what, 2009?
Not sure what year.
2009 was my first contact with her in regards to purchasing the property.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Come on up, Miss Williams. I don't think it's on. There you go.
I'm not sure if I missed, I'm sure I missed it, I don't know how the board voted. I'm sorry, good evening, board, Mr. Rice and others. Under 5A, approval of the superintendent's search.
We moved that to the end. We moved it to the end.
Okay, I just want to ask some questions since you moved it to the end.
Okay, go ahead.
Number one, what is the vendor or the company selection process? I'm just gonna read them all in there. Do you bid these jobs out? Do you only look at one company? Should you compare with other companies? Did the board vet this company that you are considering hiring? Those are the questions.
Okay, I could probably answer. What was the last question, though, Ms. Williams?
Did we vet them?
Did we what?
Vet. Sorry.
Okay, all right. As in the vendor, okay, I can tell you, I can answer some of these questions for you because I don't think Mr. Weiss should really answer them. As in the vendor, we chose Michigan Association of School Board because as the board members, we're all very familiar with that organization. We also belong to that organization, as all the members do. Pretty much every school board member in Michigan does. It's an organization that helps educate board members on what they can and can't do and how to do things and where they can find resources. As a bid process, no, we did not go out for bid. We used that company because we used them the last time we had a search. Are there other companies out there? Yes, there are other companies out there, but then also we've found out that some of them companies are a lot higher. When we first was talking about Michigan Association of School Boards, we were under the impression that it was probably going to be a higher cost than what they proposed to us. When they came in, I myself and so was some other board members were kind of surprised that it was a lot lower than we anticipated. Okay, now when the lady came out, the representative, she told us that her additional expenses, because she does live in this area, not Romulus, but in the downriver area, she said she doesn't foresee her expenses being over $500 because some of them she's not going to charge you for lunch or hotel rooms or anything like that because she lives relatively close. So that's a good thing too. The last time we did this search, we actually used Michigan Associated School Board, and there was actually a former educator that worked in the district for numerous years. I don't know exactly how many he worked, but I can tell you he worked when I was going to school because he was one of my teachers. And he worked here for several years, and then he retired and started working with the organization, and he helped us with the superintendent search. So that was a good connection with the community. Based on information for Michigan Association of School Boards, some of their new practices they do are a lot more involved with the community than some of the other organizations out there that have, and they're able to supply that and give us that stuff. So that helps us a little bit more because, like I said, I don't remember if you were exactly here when her whole presentation was, but there's a lot more community feedback, and there are meetings, and correct me, fellow members, if I'm wrong on this, but that they will have town forums that they run. We don't, Mr. Weiss doesn't, the board members, we can come, but they organize and run the meeting, so you give them the questions, and then they kind of help devise with the survey of what the community is looking for in a superintendent, not just the 7 people at a table here. So, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Another important thing to consider is MASB is a nonprofit organization. All the other consulting firms out there are certainly profit motivated. I know you expressed some issues with the outcome of the last search. That's not MASB's doing. That, and it'll be the same this go around. This Board of Education will have the ultimate say-so. It has nothing to do with MASB or John Smith Consulting. So,
Thank you.
thank you.
But you will know when we do have the interviews, the community is welcome to come and sit in the audience and listen to the interviews. And some of them, depending on how many members or individuals we have, it could be several days.
And they get an opportunity to ask questions.
It's also.
Right. So there's definitely time, a lot more with this organization, a lot more community input allowed than what previous was. So that's a good thing too. And we need our community to tell us. Okay. All right. I think I got everybody now. All right. Questions and concerns from board members. We'll start with Ms. Kraut.
I would like to thank Romulus Elementary. They did a food drive for Helping Hands, and Principal Marge McAnally and her husband were organized that, and I'm just very grateful and want to publicly thank them all, the kids and their families that did so well.
Okay. Thank you. Go ahead, John.
I have a few things. On October 9th, there's a comedy show at the high school, and I just want to thank Mr. Hurd for allowing that building to be used that night. It's a great facility. It was for a family here in Romulus that has 3 kids in our schools, one in 2nd grade, one in 4th grade, one in 6th grade. The gentleman had leukemia. He has also a kid in preschool, but he lost his battle with that on the 24th of this month. And I mean, the family had no life insurance, but they had 3 kids in our school and stuff. And like I said, I'd like to thank everybody who came out to the comedy show and bought tickets, and Mr. Hurd for doing a lot of the legwork, and the learning specialist, I believe, or Mr. Beatty at Wick School also came representing some of the school district. But I just want to throw that out there that, you know, they are Romulus residents, had 3 kids and 1 in preschool in our district. Also, last week, Mr. McLaughlin and myself and Mr. Morris and Mr. Weiss, after raising questions about some of the conditions of our buildings and inventory, went through Mount Pleasant School, and it really wasn't a pleasant sight, between vandals and equipment breakage. But I think as a board, I think we need to sit down and declare a lot of this stuff surplus, because to me, it's going to be burned. You're going to get kids breaking in there, setting piles. I mean, there's computers in there, there's books. We have furniture, and it's been vandalized. And, you know, if someone gets in, they're just going to set a fire, and that's going to put people at risk to fight that fire. But it's just an invitation. I think some of our maintenance staff did some good jobs of boarding up the windows to prevent people from looking in and stuff. But if I could get, I don't know if it's Mr. Weiss or Rebecca or Sherry, to maybe put another call out to the principals of the schools, because there's some decent furniture in there still. Maybe they want to use it and stuff like that before we declare it unuseful. I mean, there are some neat sets I think elementary kids could use. Are still in
Yeah, the
cellophane,
kindergarten
like their
package.
big maps for 1st grade, 2nd grade, kindergarten stuff. But you know, if we need chairs for certain classes or tables or file cabinets, that stuff's still over there. There's some decent stuff before that gets vandalized. But I think as a board, I think we talked to Mr. Weiss and.
If I could just
Yeah.
refine your process a little bit, what we talked about was having the board declare the contents as
Okay.
surplus, which I think is the easiest way for us to proceed. That will allow us to filter out the wheat from the
Okay.
chaff,
Very
as they
good,
say,
Yep.
and keep the good stuff.
Whatever
And
the good way you want to do
most,
it.
as you saw, most of
Yeah.
the stuff over there is not good.
Yeah.
But there are some diamonds in the rough there.
Yeah. Whatever we have to do in the next meeting or two to do this, and then let the.
I think we had said December 10th, it was going to be an agenda item to declare it as surplus.
But if you want to take a look at yourself, do so. But let's take our word for it. But
Not on your own. You
yeah,
have to be.
not
out
on your
there.
own. You know, we use Mr. Morris and Mr. Weiss for a couple hours. But yeah, I mean, if we can declare that, let the maybe principals and teachers over there that might need stuff and surplus that stuff out and.
I can put an all call out if you're interested. Take a look. And again, I want to reiterate, we do that in terms of when they want to purchase any type of,
Right.
that type of inventory chairs.
But whatever, Mr. Weiss sees better to do that, if you guys declare it before.
Yeah, we'll make sure that's
Yeah.
on the agenda.
Yeah, I don't want a madhouse of people running through guys, but whatever we have to do.
Okay. All right, Daniel?
Yes, on Tuesday, tomorrow evening, tomorrow evening at 6 p.m., our choir is having a concert at 6 p.m.
Is it 6 p.m.?
Yeah, I have
Okay.
6 p.m. Here go. A lot of times I post this because my kids they participate, so a lot of times it's little bumpers with them there on time. So I'm gonna say 6 p.m. We have our reinvention meeting at 4 p.m. here at the board office. And then December 6th and 7th, our drama club at the high school they have a production, Calling All Superheroes. It's at the high school auditorium. I have 5 p.m. For Saturday, on Saturday and Friday I have 5 p.m. as well. I'm more than sure that Saturday has a matinee too, but I'm not exactly sure.
I didn't get, the choir is 6 p.m. I'm assuming that's at the high school auditorium?
Yes, auditorium, high school auditorium.
And there's a matinee on Saturday?
That I do not know. But
Okay.
I'm sorry, 7th and 8th.
7th and 8th. That's
Oh, okay.
a Saturday,
6th
Friday,
is dress
yeah.
rehearsal.
7th and 8th.
Okay.
Okay, Ms. Buckley?
Not this time, thanks.
Okay, Ms. Beard?
I have two things. I did try to go to the Student of the Month program that they had, but I guess the time got changed. We got there at 7, and I guess it was held at 6, so we kind of missed them. So I don't know if there's any way that we can kind of find out updates on the times at all, but.
We might be able to find somebody in the audience and give us a heads up on that one.
And then,
6.
it's at 6
6
from now on?
o'clock from now
Okay.
on?
And then the other question I had, and I had asked Mr. Weiss about it in a note last week, I think it was, or it might have even been this week, in regards to the surplus at Mount Pleasant. If there was enough salvageable stuff there to do an auction, maybe even a community
We talked about that,
auction.
like a yard sale, yeah.
Mhm.
And I didn't know is there enough good stuff to even bother with that? I mean, with the cost of having a sale.
I think so. The right thing for us to do is we really need to clear out all the crud first, so we can make sure we don't overlook anything, then let our principals have a look and help us determine what's worth keeping and what nobody really is interested in.
Now, is
And then-
approving overtime an option that we have to do in order to get those people in there to clean that stuff out?
Well, give us a little time on this, and we'll come back to you with that detail, because it's not apparent right now that we're going to have to do it that way.
All right. And that's all I have.
Okay. Mr. McLaughlin?
Thank you. The two things I had were, of course, Mount Pleasant. John and I, kind of went through the building, and it just dismays me to see, and I'm sure vandals did this, but I mean, books everywhere on the floor, and it's just waiting for some idiot to throw a match on there. And even as scrap, we can sell textbooks by the pound or by the tonnage. So to answer your question, yes, there's some beautiful hardwood chairs that are I don't want to insult anybody here, but older than all of us here, I think, and beautiful chairs, and so I'm sure there's some value there. So I would hope that we're able to expedite that, especially if we're possibly going to be selling the property. We'd like to get a few bucks out of that building. The only other question I had, Mr. Chairman, is with regard to my motion of authorizing the administration to follow through with the sale of properties with interested parties. I guess we as a board need to determine what those timelines are going to look like and whether we're going to entertain land contract or not. Because I hate to see the administration spin their wheels for the next month negotiating on something that we turn around, hand back to them and say, nope, try again. Where are we going with this? We've determined we're going to sell it. Are we going, and the direct question I have, has The cash, I'll refer to them as the cash customer, have they been notified that they are welcome to make an appointment to tour the building?
They will be. We discussed waiting till after tonight.
Okay.
Could you let us know when you send that out, when they're
Yeah,
notified?
that will go through our broker, and then we'll make the call tomorrow.
Just let us know that they've been notified that they can tour, please.
Will do.
But, you know, Mr. Chairman, I don't know if board members are ready to have any dialogue. I'm not saying we have to vote on anything tonight, but I think we need to come to some sort of consensus. What timeline are we looking at? Are we going to wrap this up by the first of the year? Are we going to carry this out till March? I mean, it's only fair to the two parties that are interested in this property to know if we're going to, you know, disallow their offers and go back to the drawing board. And to be frank, our broker needs to know what to do, because I'm sure he's scratching his head going, okay, now what? So I think we at least need to have some dialogue while we're all seven here and say, where are we going?
Are you asking us to have that now, or to put it on as a discussion item, possible action?
Personally,
item
I'd
on
rather
10th?
have the conversation now to at least give some guidance as far as a consensus where we're going. We're not saying we're going to give it to buyer A or buyer B, but I think we need, because I know I have no problem saying publicly for the world, I do not support a land contract and haven't from day one, because the budgetary needs are what they are, and I'm not interested in the taxpayers being a bank any more than what we are. That being said, maybe both parties want an opportunity for a cash offer. I don't know that, but I think it behooves us to have a conversation instead of the email game that's, you know, that's getting us nowhere.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
so as far as the timeline, are we gonna extend the timeline and just wait and see what other bids we get, and then look at what we have on the table? Because if we say we're not gonna do land contract and we're gonna something cash, and you're already limiting one person, so you can't, you know, I'm not gonna have that kind of dialogue. I wanna know, I wanna look at it. So, do we extend the time and see what we get in, or we decide by the first of the year, what? What are you gonna do?
members?
Well,
When do you
until
wanna
they do
just
their
say-
walkthrough, we don't even know if the cash
Right.
offer is a good offer.
John?
We need to extend the time, so.
I mean, what are we extending it to for them? Administration needs to know what they want.
You only have one meeting in December, and it'll be pretty difficult to schedule a special meeting with the holidays and everything else. And you could resolve this. I'm sure we could get a tour arranged before, with plenty of time before December 10th. I think they're pretty eager to tour the building. It's been our fault that they haven't been able to. And then you kind of have the apples to apples comparison of the offers. You could put it on again as a discussion and possible action item on December 10th. Otherwise, it puts you into the second Monday or Tuesday.
January 14th would be the first meeting in January.
Yeah.
That's our study session.
It could be an action item. You can,
Make it a special meeting.
I'm okay with sometime in January. I mean, I don't want anyone to feel like anything's being shoved down anybody's throat. But conversely, I want this dealt with so we can move on. We have so many other things to deal with. I don't have a problem with the rest of the board if we discuss this at our study session on the 14th for possible action the 14th, definite action by January 28th.
I agree.
I'm good with that.
so January 28th, the drop dead date, everything's gonna be final by that time? Is that what everybody agrees?
Say
Or
drop
sooner?
dead.
Or sooner? Right?
Yes.
The 28th, no later?
So what, and I won't be here then, but what we're taking from that is that we would come to you with a recommendation based on the offers and the merits of those offers, recommendation that the board would discuss and could take action on it on the 14th. So we're clear, is that everybody agreed to that?
By the 28th, it's gotta be so.
I say 28th.
No, January 14th and January 28th are the two meetings in January, so no later than, by the 28th, this issue's gotta be resolved.
Okay.
So it could be the 14th if they've got all the
I was
information.
gonna say, let's do tentative the 14th, and if for some reason, that way we're not painting ourselves into a corner. If we agree as a board that we need to kick it to the 28th, then we kick it to the 28th.
Does that sound good for you, Sherry? Sherry and Rebecca?
The 14th
The 14th of January?
It's a Monday?
Yes.
I leave my Mondays open.
Okay. She didn't know she was gonna get asked
I'm leaving
questions.
that, so, I'm so leaving that.
Okay, okay.
So we'll put it on as a, we'll make the 14th into a special meeting just in case.
So are we taking additional bids on the property up until what time,
Yeah, you
or
better say something.
what's the process? Up until when? To the
Probably.
Okay, I just,
That would be my understanding is if, you know, it's out there and we would entertain anything up to and including the 14th. Except, maybe we should, I don't mean to throw a dart here, but I don't want to be handed an offer as I sit down to this board table again. So maybe we should say by noon on the 14th. If their offers are in by noon on the 14th, we will entertain discussing them at our meeting on the 14th, because I really don't want to walk in and be handed a real estate offer. That's much too important to just say, oh, by the way, here's an offer.
We can do that.
All right,
Thank you.
okay. I get to be last. All right, folks, as we know, the posting for the interim superintendent that we approved last meeting is up November 30th at the 29th. It'll be up at noon. All the board members should be notified approximately how many candidates we have that applied. Myself, Mr. McLaughlin, and Mrs. Beard will be meeting at 8:30 a.m. on the 30th, Friday, and we will be going through the applicants, and we will we'll notify the entire board on December 3rd. Keep it open, 5 a.m. 5 p.m. Sorry about that, folks. I'm used to starting in the morning.
You get up.
Have fun with that.
Hey, we get more done by 9 o'clock, some do all day. Okay.
Yes.
5 p.m. on the 3rd. Everybody that can be here needs to be here. Mr. McLaughlin will be excused. He will be somewhere in the Mediterranean,
No, Caribbean.
one of them things,
I know you want me to go far, far away, but.
5
just on the
p.m.
SS Titanic.
5 p.m. on the 3rd.
Anyways, 5 o'clock on the 3rd, and then we will start conducting interviews if it is necessary, depending on how many applicants we have. So by the 30th, we will know if there's one or several, and we will start interviews on the 3rd, and on the 10th, the board will announce who's going to be the interim superintendent. That will take effect January 1 of 2013.
Now, we had the 17th scheduled as a date if we needed it. Is that
It's if we
still-
need it, if we need it. But we're gonna go with the 3rd, so if Mother Nature throws a bunch of snow on us or something, we've got a backup plan. So right now, the 3rd, keep open at 5 p.m. Just casual. Okay,
I will be.
and,
that's a special board.
that'll be a special, that's for the interviews. And then we'll know on Friday how many there will be. I'll email all the board members and let them know how many candidates we have, and then we'll notify the candidates with the time of the interviews. Tentatively, right now, Rebecca will be sitting in on the interviews to help us if we have any questions, legality-wise or anything like that. Carl will not be here on them. He can sit in the audience, but he's not going to be up here doing any of the interview stuff because it conflicts or anything like that, okay? Anybody got any other questions on that? Yes?
No, I'm just gonna ask Anna if we can get a December calendar. Thanks.
All right. Other than that, that's all I have. We need to go into executive session. And then after the executive session, we'll be discussing, we'll only have one item, and that will be, hold on, the approval of the superintendent search firm.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Can you please, for the public's edification, explain why there's a request for an executive session, and then request the vote, please?
We're going into executive session for employee concerns, is why we're going in it. Okay?
The personnel matters?
Personnel matter. So it'd be employee concerns and confidentiality on some of the things.
It is, for the record, Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir?
the items that were being requested to go into executive session, it is my opinion, we are not able to enjoy the cloak of executive session. These items are specifically spelled out in employment contracts and policy of this Board of Education, and I will vote accordingly.
Okay, sir. Okay. I need a motion for executive session, if there is one.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion that we go into executive session.
Okay. Motion by Ms. Buckley, supported by Mrs. Funderburg. Okay, can I get roll call, please?
Mrs. Kraut?
Yes.
Mr. Theed?
No.
Mrs. Funderburg?
Yes.
Mrs. Buckley?
Yes.
Mrs. Beard, yes. Mr. McLaughlin?
No.
Mr. Kudrick?
Yes. Okay, folks, we're going to have to clear the room. There will only be that one item. Mrs. Bowles, you can stay. There will only be the one item, that's the superintendent search firm approval. Then after that, it'll be adjournment.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I move we come out of executive session.
Got a motion by Mr. McLaughlin, supported by Mr. Thie. Can I get roll call, please?
Yes. Mrs. Kraut?
Yes.
Mr. Theed?
Yes.
Mrs. Thunderberg?
Yes.
Mrs. Buckley?
Yes.
Mrs. Beard, yes. Mr. McLaughlin?
Yes.
Mr. Kudrick?
Yes. Okay, I need a motion. We have, the next one is MASB contract for superintendent search.
Mr. Chair, I move that the Board of Education approve the contract with MASB to act as a consultant and advisor to the school district and render services to assist in the employment of a new superintendent.
Support.
Got a motion by Ms. Buckley, supported by Mr. McLaughlin. Is there any questions? Okay. Hearing none. I think there are no questions. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? 7-0.
Move to adjourn.
All right. Motion by Mr. McLaughlin, supported by Mr. Theed. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? 44. Meeting adjourned.